East ancient civilizations, few cultures developed a relationship with death as complex and significant as that of the Egyptians. In this context, Anubis, the jackal-headed god, played a fundamental role. He not only represented the transition to the afterlife, but was also the guardian of the secrets of mummification, an essential process in the spiritual life of the Egyptian people. Anubis was one of the oldest gods in the Egyptian pantheon and was mainly associated with embalming and the protection of the dead. His distinctive appearance, with a human body and a jackal's head, made him easily recognizable. In nature, jackals roam cemeteries, which likely influenced the symbolic representation of Anubis as the protector of decaying bodies. For the Egyptians, the figure of Anubis not only guarded the cemeteries, but also oversaw the judgment of the deceased. For the Egyptians, death was not the end, but the beginning of a journey to eternity. But for the soul to safely pass into the afterlife, the body had to be perfectly preserved. Preserving the body was crucial, as they believed that the soul of the deceased, known as the Ka, needed an intact physical body to continue its journey to the afterlife. This is where mummification came into play, a complex and ritualized process that could last up to 70 days. The Temple of Anubis, the god of mummification and guardian of the dead, became the setting for the sacred ritual. In funerary rituals, priests wore Anubis masks while performing ceremonies, symbolizing the direct presence of the god. Dressed in white robes and carrying protective amulets, they began the process by removing the internal organs, which were considered susceptible to decay. The brain, seen as useless for life in the afterlife, was extracted through the nostrils using a metal hook. The heart was often left in place, as it would be needed for the final judgment before Osiris, the god of the underworld. The other vital organs were removed, treated, and placed in canopic jars, each protected by a guardian god: Hapi, Duamutef, Imseti, and Kebesenuf, and were buried alongside the body. This process had spiritual significance, as it was believed that the organs played a role in the final judgment, where the soul of the deceased would be weighed against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and justice. The body was then dehydrated using natron, a natural salt that removed moisture, preserving the tissues for eternity and preventing decomposition. This drying process could last between 40 to 60 days. During these days, priests recited hymns and prayers, pleading for the soul's safe passage into the afterlife. Afterward, the body was filled with linen or straw to regain its original shape and was carefully wrapped in linen bandages. Each layer of bandages was impregnated with resins and scented oils, which not only helped preserve the body but also protected it from evil spirits. The priests placed amulets and talismans between the layers of bandages, each with a specific purpose: to protect the body, guide its soul, and ensure its resurrection. The bandages not only served to protect the body, but also to ensure that the deceased had the necessary tools to face the challenges of the afterlife. These rituals culminated in the opening of the mouth, a rite that allowed the deceased to speak, breathe, and eat again in the afterlife, symbolically restoring their vital faculties. Anubis' role did not end with mummification. In fact, his presence was crucial throughout the entire funerary process. The ancient Egyptians believed that Anubis guided the deceased through the dangerous and chaotic world of the Duat, the realm of the dead. In this underworld, the deceased had to face a series of trials and obstacles, and Anubis' guidance was essential to ensure success in this journey. Mummification had not only religious implications, but also reflected the social status of the deceased. Pharaohs and the elite of society could afford the most advanced techniques and elaborate rites. They were buried in tombs filled with valuable objects, food, and offerings, all intended to be used in the afterlife. These objects were not mere decorations. Each had a symbolic or practical purpose, ensuring that the deceased could live in the afterlife with the same luxury they had enjoyed on earth, while the lower classes were buried more simply. However, the belief in the importance of body preservation extended to all social classes. Even those who could not afford a full mummification process sought ways to preserve the body in some form. Finally, the body was placed in a sarcophagus adorned with hieroglyphs that narrated the person's life and deeds. The sarcophagus featured intricate carvings and paintings depicting scenes from the person's life and their journey to the afterlife. The sarcophagus was sealed and taken to the tomb. Egyptian tombs were monuments that reflected their social status and belief in eternal life. Anubis also took care of sealing the sarcophagus and closing the tomb, protecting the deceased from any harm or desecration. During the Old Kingdom, Anubis was considered the primary funerary god, but as the figure of Osiris, the god of resurrection and eternal life, gained importance, Anubis took a secondary role. However, far from losing relevance, Anubis integrated into the Osiris cult, assuming the role of his assistant in funerary rites. The connection between these two gods became evident in myths related to the death and resurrection of Osiris. According to legend, it was Anubis who embalmed Osiris's body after his brother Seth dismembered him, granting Anubis even greater status as the master of mummification. In funerary texts, Anubis is described as responsible for weighing the heart of the deceased against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the deceased was considered pure-hearted, just, and worthy of entering the afterlife in the fields of Aru. If not, their fate was to be devoured by Ammit, a soul-devouring demon creature. This judgment, known as the psychostasis, or weighing of the soul, highlights Anubis's importance as a guardian of morality and cosmic order. Anubis was not a god of terror, but a benevolent guide who ensured the just transition to the afterlife. The importance of death in Egypt was far from being a feared event. It was considered a necessary step toward immortality. The presence of Anubis in the funerary processes ensured that this journey was carried out safely and orderly, guaranteeing that the deceased could enjoy eternal life in the afterlife. Thank you for staying until the end of this video. If you enjoyed the content, press the subscription button so you don't miss any stories. See you in the next video.